Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Paws Up preview for week one of the college football season, but game number 2 for FIU football as they host the University of Maine Black Bears. I'm Jake Gibson, of course, alongside my friends Kevin Barral and Jonathan Mayer. First game at the Cage in 2023. How the hell are we feeling?
Feel pretty good. Obviously, last time they were at the Cage in the week 1 game, it was against FCS Bryant, and we know how that ended up. It was a thrilling game, obviously, and this time around, FIU is playing another FCS team. This time, the Maine Black Bears, who find themselves at 0-0.
Yeah.
Obviously, we saw a lot of good. We saw a lot of bad from FIU last week against the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs, but this we'll kind of dive into that. We'll dive into what we've seen from Maine. Obviously, a team that's not very good that went 2-9, but somehow still produces some NFL talent. They had a couple guys go to the league, some entering the NFL draft, and if you look the season before 2021, they were actually a over 500 team. So you just got to look and you never, with these FCS teams, yes, it should be a cakewalk, but you can never look at it like that with an FIU team.
No, absolutely. And we and you're absolutely right. We saw that against Bryant last year, of course, back in 2020. Of course, we Johnny, I know you were there, and Kevin, I
last
believe you were
season,
there too.
Season, 2022.
Well, in 2020, FIU played an FCS school in Jacksonville State, lost that game, right? So FIU and FCS, not the best track record, but this should definitely be an exciting game. Johnny, how are you?
I'm excited. I mean, it's the first home opener is always the greatest one because you're back season with all the fans and everybody. And I know there's a lot of expectations with this team, and obviously a tough game last week. But it's a lot of once people are there at their home stadium, it's a great feeling. I know we're all excited to be there, and I'm excited to turn out. I think it's gonna be a good turnout. We saw what it was last year with the Bryant student section. I think it's gonna be a great turnout tonight at 6:30 coming up.
Yeah. And, Scott Carr has been just campaigning that this whole offseason. Get your butts to the stadium, get some season tickets, support the Panthers, and specifically for this game, wear gold in case you're making your way to the stadium, don't know what to wear. The theme tonight is gold. FIU dropped their gold pants, gold end zones. It should be a fun theme tonight. So let's get right into it. Let's talk a bit about that Louisiana Tech game because I want to start off with some of the good, some of the bad, what we think will stay the same, what we think will change coming into this game against the Maine Black Bears. So I want to start off with, as I rewatched the game, the Louisiana Tech game, I feel like the biggest factor into what made FIU so good in the first half and even kept them in the game in the second was the three-headed monster that was the linebacker core, right? You had Donovan Manuel racking up 15 tackles, leading all defensive players in week 0. Combine that with 11 tackles by Reggie Peterson and 10 by Jamal Potts. FIU's defense did their job. How do you think they're going to transition to this game against Maine? Let's start with Kevin.
Yeah, I think if there's one positive that we have to take away from week 0, it was definitely the defense. Obviously, you mentioned the 3 main guys who really stepped up, 2 linebackers and nickelback Jamal Potts. Overall, just a lot of success there. They made some huge stops, especially, with the forced fumble. We had this 2 sacks in the game.
Yes.
We'll see how they look. Obviously, this is a quarterback that they don't have too much footage on. You would have to go back to 2021 to find the last full season for Derek Robertson, who's the starting quarterback for the Maine Black Bears. And aside from that, you just have to feel pretty good where you're at. Obviously, they made some really good plays. I think the only concern for the FIU defense right now is making tackles. Overall, we've seen times that they're just not able to get the first hit, and you could notice that receivers, running backs, whoever it is, they are able to get some extra yards off of them just not being able to make the initial tackle. And I think that's what FIU defense needs to really step up in tonight. Obviously, this should be a big game to boost confidence when it comes to just what the expectation is of a cakewalk for this team. But, never say never, I would say. But very impressive. Reggie was great. Reggie was great.
Yes.
Reggie Peterson, amazing game for him. He had the sack. I believe it was 11 tackles. He ended up second in total tackles in week 0. Then obviously you have the leader of this defense, Donovan Manuel, who played an outstanding game. And then the other sack, I believe, I want to say was Keegan Davis or Will Prendergrass.
I know it was the fumble recovery.
The fumble recovery, yes, that was Keegan Davis. I can't recall who was the second sack. I believe it was was it Marcus Tatum?
I feel like it was maybe Claude Larkins. I need to look back. I knew it was.
We need to look back, but there was definitely 2 sacks on the night.
Yeah. And not to mention the interception in the first half and then the fumble in the second half produced by the defense. The turnovers were great. The linebacker core was great. I think the defense for FIU did more than enough for the Panthers to win that game. So, Johnny, let's talk a bit about FIU's offense, more specifically what we saw from running back Shamari Lawrence. 139 yards, had an absolutely fantastic game. One of the best performances by a running back for FIU we have seen in a very long time. But the offense was very run heavy. They did not rely on the passing game at all. Grayson James, of course, only throwing for 4 yards. Johnny, how do you feel offensive coordinator David Yost is going to rearrange the play calling for this game against Maine? Is it still going to be a run heavy offense in your opinion, or are they going to balance it out more?
I think it's based on who they play. I think they felt with the La Tech game, and we saw in the first half they felt that they can really run over them, and they were able to, and they were able to get some key PIs as well to move the ball. But I think it's just based on the game itself. I think against a team like Maine, you're able to really balance it out and get some big chunk plays, you can get some big run plays. I think it just depends game by game for David Yost, and obviously we saw it wasn't as successful in the second half, and we saw a lot of the adjustments that La Tech made that allowed them to stay in the ball game and eventually get the win. But I think game by game, it's gonna, based on what FIU sees, and I think tonight, it's gonna be a team where they know how the passing game went. It wasn't great, but I think they're gonna find a way to get both in. And we saw the running game; it was just phenomenal. Shamari Lawrence, I would expect will have a great game tonight. The running backs will have a great game, but I think the passing game will really bounce back tonight, and they should deservedly so against a team like Maine, who is FCS and gives up a lot of points.
Yeah. And something to add on to what Johnny said quickly, this Black Bears defense lost a lot of guys. Like their best player, on both ends of the ball, I believe, is a cornerback. So I can't recall the name right now. I know I should have asked Coach Mack. I did not. But man, this is a defense that lost a lot of pieces. So if all of a sudden you realize that the run game is working for you, they're going to rely on that. And they did that. Yeah. They did that against Louisiana Tech. They really relied on the run game. I think Grayson only ended up passing 12 passes, and only 5 of those were completions for 4 of them. And obviously the 4-yard game, which cements him in FIU history, not in a good way. But I think something that we'll notice is let's see where FIU really goes in that first drive. If you see that they're taking advantage of that run game, man, why just not stop? And we'll see where they go quarterback-wise, obviously. I think we'll address this soon, but Coach Mack did not really say Grayson was a starter. He didn't mention if anything would change. If something doesn't change, Grayson's the starting quarterback, so that's where we're going into right now.
Yeah, that's it. We can speculate as much as we want, but until we get a clear and concise answer, that's where we are right now. So before we start to talk a bit about Maine, I'd like to open up the floor to both you, Kevin, and Johnny regarding some of the other key players that you really liked in that game for FIU that you don't feel like has been talked about enough, and who you think will have a monster game against the University of Maine. As far as I go, I have to give props to the offensive line. Did their job for most of the game, and pretty much an unsung group right now. But I think that they're really going to make a name for themselves when you pair them up with a threat like Lawrence and how many yards he can get this season. Aside from that, Chase Gabriel had a perfect game kicking, so you can always be happy about that. Having that reliable kicker is always a great feeling. So I'll open it up to you guys. Who are some players you were really happy about?
I'll let you go. Actually, I'll go first. I'll go with the Hezika Masses, cornerback. He was pretty good. He made a good amount of tackles. I believe it was 7 total. He was really good for the most part in this game. I really liked what he did. It's hard to highlight anyone else from the offense. I'll give a shout out to Antonio Patterson. He had his first career touchdown, so shout out to him. I think he'll be a big part of the run game. Obviously, when the public depth chart went out, he was the second one over Keyshawn Owens, something that I think was a little bit surprising given the fact that I don't think he played on offense at all last season. Keyshawn, we expected him to be a guy who would take that big step going into next year, especially with flex out, but I'll give a shout out to Antonio Patterson. I think he'll be used a good amount in the run game. So I'll go 1 offense, 1 defense there.
I'm going to go Reggie Peterson. I know people talk a lot about, Shamari, but I think personally Reggie Peterson had a monster game. Even down to Emmanuel, they both were great. But I think Reggie had a fantastic game and a guy that, I've seen the ascension of him. He's always talked about his rise and getting the scholarship and now being a starter in the linebacking core and that leader. I mean, he had double-digit in tackles, sack we added earlier, but he had a really good game. Underrated. I feel like it's Reggie. But I think Dayton Montiel as well. You got to give credit to Dayton, who I think had 330 punting yards. It was a lot of punts for him, but he worked. He was able to work them down to the inside, maybe around the 20, which is really, really key. And obviously it was a tough loss, but forced La Tech to really move the ball, and I think Dayton had a really good game, and it's things to come for Dayton's on the Ray Guy Award watch list. So shout out to Mr. Montiel.
Yeah, Dayton didn't really have to do much in the first half, but when he was called upon more and more and more in the second half, having to punt balls from way inside FIU's own territory from the 10, 15 all the way to the 25, he did his work, and he did not make it easy for Louisiana Tech's offense. So before we finally move away from Louisiana Tech, and I know that's what every FIU fan wants to do, just any final thoughts from you guys on how that game turned out, what you have liked to have seen overall different, and just a word of advice for this football team moving forward, because boy, there's so much to take away from that game.
I wasn't the biggest fan of the play calling, and I think we all came to that agreement. Obviously, for week 0, you're trying to see where you're at. Obviously, they thought they were very good in the run game, and they relied on that heavily. We saw that. So I think, obviously rely on your run game. You have a great running back in Shamari Lawrence, who's big, he's strong, he's going to really push through, he's going to give you a lot of yards. But man, you got to get some pass games going, even if and I want to see more, more confident passes. I don't want to see these little bubble passes. Like, obviously that works with someone like Smoke Harris, who they did a lot with this past game, and they got him going a lot with Bachmeier Smoke. They got that bubble game going, but man, you want to see more deep passes, especially against a team especially against an FCS team like Maine. Obviously, we may be undermining them a lot, but it's an FCS team. They struggled a lot last year. They lost a lot of guys. If it was NFL, graduation, transfer portal, whatever it is, this is a very new-looking team with a very young head coach. I believe he's only for like his second or third year. They're like 30 years old. Yeah, second year, 30 years old. So we'll see. But I do want to see more deep passes from this FIU team, whoever the quarterback may be on Saturday.
Johnny, what's your final takeaway from that game?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough to see, but I think the best thing you can say is we led, with a minute left, and I think it shows that we can play deep, and I think this is a team that is good to play close with teams when they can. But I thought the defense played really good, and for the amount of snaps they played, which was a lot, I like that. But obviously the passing game has to find a way to do something differently, and if I think they can definitely be the team that we maybe expect to see, maybe even more, because when we were up jumping out 14-0, everyone was like, "Oh boy, that's that FIU team right here." And obviously it ended not on a little sour note, but I think a game tonight, if they're able to really play their butts off, and the defense does their thing and the offense, shines, I think people will be like, okay, it's all good. But I think the goal is don't make this like Brian. You don't want to make it too close. Just know that it's a game where you have to get right. And just look for next week. It's a very good matchup against North Texas.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, you need to win. Like, if you need to win a game, it's this one, because if you start 0-2, bowl game chances are probably out the window.
Yeah,
that's all I'll say.
I mean to start the season 0-3. I don't mean to cut you off.
Schedule does not get much easier. You have North Texas.
This is going to be the easiest part of the schedule, no doubt about it, right? And that's not to take away from the University of Maine. They could go into FIU Stadium and shock the world, but
that's what I'll damn. That's the other thing. They could go in here. They could pull a Bryant, and except Bryant losing in overtime, they could win. So I'm not. I think Maine's a pretty good team for the most part. They obviously produce talent at the highest level of the NFL. Their quarterback has experience. He's a senior. He's been on this team for a very long time. So the only thing that's really doubtful with Maine is their run game. Obviously, they don't have their star running back Elijah Barnhart, I believe. That was his name, and we'll see how they go from there.
So let's talk a bit more about that Maine team now. To clear the air, I mean, if you're an FIU South Florida college sports fan, the University of Maine is not a team you're very familiar with. So let's clear the air on them, right? They're FCS. They play in the Coastal Athletic Association. There's a bunch of teams that play there. Of course, some familiar names to most people: Richmond, Villanova, Delaware. But but what about New Hampshire? That's probably the most familiar opponent is New Hampshire, not because of football, but because of soccer. What we saw last season,
Next Friday, they play again.
Yeah, that absolutely incredible playoff NCAA tournament game between FIU and New Hampshire. But yeah, so Orono, Maine is where the Black Bears are from. Their football program has been both good and bad. They've had their rough patches. They have 2 conference championships with the CAA, but as you mentioned, last year they went 2-9. Okay, they lost their last 5 games in a row. Their only 2 wins were against Hampton and Monmouth. But a 2-9 record does not sound good, but let's not discredit them because 5 of Maine's 9 losses were in 1-score games. I think that is very impressive. Sounds like Nebraska here with how many 1-score games Nebraska loses. Maine was pretty much the exact same.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to mention. When you look at their record, it was like 1 to 2 point losses. I'm like, man, like this could be a really close game if they play that. If they play in those type of games like that. Obviously, unfortunately, for them, they don't get out of those with wins. But for the most part, you're keeping it very, very close. That must mean that this is a pretty damn good team for the most part. When you look at their season prior of their 2-9 record, they were 6-5, and they're pretty damn good in the conference. So something to keep a note of there. Obviously, when we're talking to Coach Mack, this is a team that's one of the better teams in CAA for the most part. When you look historically, obviously, you mentioned it, Jake. They've won championships before. And I guess if you want to look back 20 years, the last time they played FIU, they won. They're 2-0 against the Panthers. So if you want to talk about some luck, they have some luck on that end. So they have a really good team for the most part. After doing some research, they have some guys. They lost a lot of guys. When you look at their defense, their top 5 guys in total tackles are gone. Yeah. So that's something to mention, that they lost their vets of the defense, if it was transfer portal or just they're done. And we'll see.
They're done. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Maine football, definitely a mystery. However, I was doing research. The University of Maine's hockey team, top notch. But
makes sense.
Scott Carr, FIU hockey. Come on. Anyway.
I know Mr. Randy Press, great guy. He told me Maine is a great hockey team. There it is.
Yes. I mean, that's kind of to be expected. Those Northeast teams, they take their hockey very, very seriously. Like how a team like FIU takes their soccer very, very seriously. But this is a football preview. Let's get back into football, okay? As you mentioned, Kevin, 2002 and 2003. Those are the last 2 years that Maine played FIU. Of course, 2002 being the very first season for the Panthers. Both games were L's in favor for FIU, but can't really compare the 2002 squad to what we're going to see today. So but did want to point that out. There is history between Maine and FIU. So yeah, man, 37 new players have joined Maine's roster, right? Either the transfer portal, graduation, or as you also mentioned, Kevin, the NFL draft and just picking up undrafted free agents. Maine had a lot of those, right? So if there was one thing that was made very clear, this Maine roster had, and for the most part still has, some undeniable talent. So let's talk about Joseph Fagnano, right? He recorded over 2,200 passing yards and 15 touchdowns last season. But shocker, he left to UConn, who already played against NC State, I believe, last week. It was a UConn loss, but we're almost now starting to preview when FIU has to go and play UConn because, assuming everything stays the same, we're going to see Joseph Fagnano again.
Yeah, that's a big one. That was a big loss for them. Obviously, he played, I believe, on every single game for them. But aside from that, if you saw some playing time for other quarterbacks on their stats, you would notice those are garbage time minutes, or it was just towards the end where that's it.
Yeah. So
that's why you saw that one appearance from Derek Robertson, who's their starting quarterback, senior. They have 2 seniors on the roster. I believe they have a redshirt freshman or junior out there too. So. Just expect Derek Robertson to be the guy, and if not, you'll see their backup senior if this turns into an FIU blowout.
So remember the name Joseph Fagnano when FIU plays UConn on 6.
We'll be previewing him soon. Yeah,
we'll be previewing that, of course. So Johnny, I wanted to ask you, as Kevin mentioned, Derek Robertson did not see much action in 2022, but 1,500 yards and 12 touchdowns in only, I believe, 5 games of work in 2021. It's not bad. So how does a team like FIU prepare to take on a quarterback who pretty much had a year off? You would think rust would play into this game, right? The rust factor for Maine and their quarterback.
I mean, yeah, you saw with Bachmeyer. He played 3 games last year, and FI took advantage of it, but obviously got a little bit rolling towards the end. I think for FIU, they're going to have to put pressure. If they put pressure on this quarterback, he's going to have a tough time. And I think FIU's shown it. They can really add a lot of pressure into the trenches and on the line. I think that's what FIU is going to do. And look, we know last year with Zevi Ekis, who was the correct Brian, he was running all over us.
Yes.
I think for FIU, they don't want that. They know that it's an FCS game. They have the talent. That's the thing, the disparity. FIU is a more talented team. That is for sure. If you look on paper, they're better. So you can have a situation where you make things go in their way. I think for FIU is play the game, the call that worked for them last week. Just put pressure, and I think you'll have time to shine. And I think FIU's proven it. They can do that, but you got to put pressure.
That's the thing. This is like one of the only times where you go roster to roster, and FIU is clearly the better team at almost every single position. Quarterback obviously still a little bit
iffy. It's iffy.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of the offense, of course, we go into the running backs and wide receivers for Maine. Again, kind of a strange story, but they had some key pieces on offense last year, and looking at the tweets by Maine, they got players that went to the Indianapolis Colts, the Green Bay Packers, and the Baltimore Ravens. So this is a weird game to preview. Let's just make that abundantly clear. This is a strange game to preview because we're just as lost in doing research on Maine as I would assume the Maine podcast is making a preview for this game. They don't really know what to expect, just like we. Yeah, shout out Maine podcast, whatever it's called.
Yeah, they have a couple. I was looking at their game notes, but and that's too. You may think we're lost, and maybe Maine is lost. FIU football is lost. They barely have footage to look at. They were mentioning to us on Tuesday when they were doing their press conferences. They don't have that much footage to look at, but they have noticed that this is a very physical team, and they're gonna have to. And they brought in some big boy tight ends. They brought some big guys. I think that's the way we could put it. So I think that's something we'll be looking at a lot tonight. The tight end group and how they look.
So, but again, just to throw out some names there, who I think that FIU fans should watch out for that could have solid games tonight because of the experience. Because again, most of their weapons left, so the ones that are returning only had limited roles last season. So they just like the quarterback, they're expected to grow and grow and grow this season for me. And that's wide receiver Montego Moss and running back Tavion Banks.
Yep.
So look out for those on offense. And that's pretty much all we can really say on offense, unless either you have anything to add on Maine's the no-name offense for the Maine Black Bears.
Yeah, I guess just as I mentioned, take a look at the tight end group. I think that's something Coach Mack really emphasized and something he thinks could really play a factor into tonight's game. So we'll see how that looks. And it's a good team. We'll see. Should be a fun matchup. Obviously, home opener, as Johnny mentioned, always feels a little bit different. You feel pretty excited to walk in there. No, FIU football will be played today. They're rolling with new gold pants. So it should be a fun night. Should be a fun night of football. 6:30 kickoff. We'll have some fun for sure. All three of us will be there. We'll be walking around the stadium, showing what's up. Obviously, there's now Chick-fil-A at the stadium. So
yes, we saw that Chick-fil-A.
A little expensive, but it's fine.
Johnny, I want to ask you, as someone living on campus, this entire week, what have you seen from the campus itself? Just like walking around, have you been seeing lots of flyers? Have you been seeing lots of ads promoting this game tonight? Just what has the atmosphere been like on campus in preparation for this game?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of flyers. I've seen the full players out there. Just around campus. But I think there's excitement. I think people are excited about the tailgating, which is downstairs for me, right at Tamiami Hall. I think people are excited just to have that camaraderie and knowing that there's an event on campus, which is always a big thing for the school. And I think FIU's done a really good job, and the athletic department and the whole university of making sure that it's a big event, which in years past they didn't do enough to really promote it. I think this year that you see there's excitement. Downstairs already they're getting a little tents ready, and they have the big stations of the big giant thing for water to make sure you're hydrated and stuff. So
and a giant monster truck.
Yeah, there you go. I was say it also cleared up a little bit the rain.
That's the thing that needs to be addressed. It is raining really.
It's cleared up.
Not at FIU where I'm at. It's raining really bad. But
yeah. So to clear any confusion, this was recorded at noon on game day. Looking out my window here in Homestead, yeah, it's raining a bit, but so what? That's just football weather, isn't it? Right, a bit of rain.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hey, as long as there's not thunder in a 10-mile radius,
yeah,
to go for some football tonight.
Our fellas in Coral Gables had to experience that last night when they took on the other Miami, the one in Ohio. So we got a bit sidetracked there, but let's finish up talking about Maine with their defense. And again, this is going to be a very short preview compared to Louisiana Tech because there was a lot of storylines with that team. This one, not so much. But I did want to mention that I think the weakest point of this Maine roster is their defensive line, right? I believe 4 starters from last year all went away. The only returning starter, Darius McKenzie, he only got 2 sacks and 14 tackles in 9 games last year, right? So I think Maine's defensive line is going to be their biggest weakness in this game, and that's something that I know Shamari Lawrence and the O-line is gonna they're licking their chops in preparation.
They're licking their chops, and I think David Yost is as well, because he knows he could be able to kind of take a good chunk of the game plan he used for Louisiana Tech and just insert it to tonight's game. So we'll see how that goes. I'm not too excited for that at the same time. Obviously, you want to see Shamari exceed the 100 yards rushing. Right now, he leads all FBS running backs in yards. Obviously, only like 14 teams played, 15 teams played. So can't say too much about it. But if you're playing a weak defensive line, and that's something that FIU identifies early on in the game, wouldn't surprise if you don't see whoever the quarterback is, Grayson, Keywan, Hayden, whoever it is, throw for not too many yards.
Yeah. So with that said, I think that the best player, if I had to pick one player on Maine that I think is their best overall talent, it would be their man in the secondary, Kazir, also known as Bugs Brown. He's trying to become the face of the unit. He earned 59 tackles in 2022. Pretty good season for him. Keep an eye out for him. But aside from that, the Maine defense is even more confusing to talk about than the Maine offense, right? And we're not even going to try to get into Maine special teams because that's another just bag of we don't know what.
We can start wrapping it up.
Yeah, man. So before we get into predictions, I did want to talk about the rest of Conference USA a bit. Again, not that many schools were in there anyway. But looking back at yesterday, of course, we were all there. We saw Jacksonville State beat UTEP. That was a pretty fun game to watch. The big shocker, UMass beating New Mexico State on week 0 as well, and of course FIU and La Tech. As I mentioned before, I think it's prediction time for CUSA this week, right? We have a slate of games here. Just quickly, which team you think is going to win in their matchup for CUSA? And of course, we can't. By the time we get to post game, we'll probably know what games we were right or wrong with it, right? So let's get right into it. Playing right now, Louisiana Tech, who of course we all saw last week, on the road in Dallas, taking on Southern Methodist, the brand new team in ACC that just happened yesterday. How do you got that game going on?
I'll just go with Louisiana Tech. I don't know too much about the other team, so
right.
Obviously, Bachmeyer already has a week under him.
Yes,
under himself. Smoke Harris as well. That team looked pretty good for the most part. I'll just go Louisiana Tech. I'm not going to go no score predictions here because I'm not sure about that.
So. We can't do it for CUSA, but
I don't want them to win, but I'll just go the safe pick and I'll go Louisiana Tech.
I know it's a little cheating, but I did just check the score and Southern Methodist is winning. So you know what? Let's just ride with the ponies. What say you, Johnny?
I'm going against SMU. They're a very good offensive team. I think they're moving out of the American for the ACC, but
the ACC, they Cal and Stanford joining the ACC. So you're gonna have Pacific Coast teams playing in the Atlantic Coast Conference. That's cool. That's cool. Full of laughs, ain't it? Yeah. So next up, also going on right now. Not going to check the score for this one. A team that we're all excited to see in Conference USA, and that's Liberty, the brand new team in the conference. They're at home taking on Bowling Green. I think I got to go with the Flames on this one.
Bowling Green is what?
The Bowling Green Falcons. They are FBS. They are, I believe, they're also part of the MAC. They have that MACtion. Right?
I'll just go with Liberty.
Yeah, Liberty.
Yeah.
And now Jacksonville State, another brand new Conference USA team. We're going to be saying that a lot. They're hosting East Tennessee State. That is at 1:00 today.
That's former Donovan Emanuel's FCS school.
Right. Yeah. It all comes full circle back to CUSA.
I'll take
I still got to go Jack State though.
Yeah, they impressed me on week 1, week 0. I'm sorry.
I was very happy with what I saw from the Gamecocks of Jacksonville, Alabama. Right, so got to go Jack State, and then Western Kentucky, who many predict to win Conference USA this season. They're at home hosting the South Florida Bulls. I think this is an easy dub for Western.
That's a good game.
It could be better than what I'm thinking, but I think the Hilltoppers got this.
Yeah, I think it's Western Kentucky.
Yeah.
We'll pass at Maine and FIU for now. We'll say that to the end. Middle Tennessee, the Blue Raiders.
Alabama. Give me Alabama.
The Crimson.
Give me Alabama.
Alabama tends to do well with their season openers and FCS, so I think this is an easy dub. The question is, I don't even know what they're favored by. I think you got to take the points there for the Crimson Tide.
You take whatever you can. That's Alabama that game.
All right, UTEP. They, of course, fell to Jacksonville State on the road. They're back at home today, taking on Incarnate Word. Really good basketball school. We're talking football today. I think this is going to be the close one. This is going to be the first aside from Alabama, this is going to be the first non-Conference USA team I take today. I'm going to go with Incarnate Word.
I mean, Incarnate Word is a very good offensive FCS. I think they're one of the best FCS offensive programs.
Yes.
I'm taking the upset. I think Incarnate Word's going to win today.
I'll take Incarnate Word as well.
Oh, the upset. Yeah. How about that?
I don't like UTEP this year at all, man. I don't know how they lost. I don't know how they beat that fight last year.
They're a better home team than a road team. I'll put it to that. But
yeah,
I think Incarnate Word may try to get upset today.
And 8 o'clock tonight, by the way, the UTEP game is 8 o'clock. Also 8 o'clock, New Mexico State, who we saw lost to UMass, right? The UMass Minutemen walked into Las Cruces, New Mexico, and dropped 41 points on them. I think New Mexico State is going to play piss today when they host Western Illinois, an FCS school. I'm going to go with New Mexico State here.
Oh, yeah.
Aggies.
And one of the most hyped college football teams, BYU, is hosting brand new Conference USA team Sam Houston State. That's at 9 o'clock today in Utah. I'd like
BYU.
to pick Sam Houston. BYU. Yeah. So by the time post game rolls around, we'll have an idea for all these, except for maybe that BYU one, whether we got those right or not. So that'll be fun to check out later. Let's get into predictions for tonight's game between Maine and FIU. I think we're all in agreement that we all believe that FIU is going to take this one. But what I want to know from you two is what is going to be the biggest storyline of the game. Start out with Kevin.
Oh, God. I'll say Keywan Jenkins gets some action, and I'll say he throws his first career touchdown.
Mm-hmm. Well, who do you think is aside from potentially Keywan, do you think Shamari repeats his performance from La Tech?
Let's go 200 yards rushing for Shamari.
200 yards rushing. Dang.
I feel good. I feel good.
And Johnny,
see how much they relied on the run game last week?
They did. No, it was obvious
that they will run all over Maine.
Johnny, what say you? How is this game going to turn out?
I think FIU is going to take it. I think they're going to win 42-7. That's what I'm going with.
42-7 is very high praise from a team that only threw for 4 passing yards. Well, how much of that is going to be off for running? How many touchdowns are going to be off
I think it's going to probably be a little more than running. It's going to be more running than passing, but I do think both will get some time in. And for impact player, honestly, I'm going to say I think the defense is going to shine. I think the line is going to get some sacks. I'll say they're going to get 3 sacks today. I think a forced fumble, and I think that I think we'll get an INT. I'm going to say the interception will be CJ Christian gets the pick.
Ooh,
I like that pick.
My boy,
I'm also going FIU, right? And I think the difference maker is going to be the offensive line. If they looked good against La Tech, they're going to look like the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line against taking on Maine today, right? I think the offense is going to have their way regardless of the play calling, regardless of who's throwing, who's catching. The O-line's going to get some holes. They're going to just help the offense. I'm going to say FIU 34. I'm going to say Maine 9. Okay? So, a clean sweep. Our first clean sweep of the college football season. We're all on the Panthers today.
Won't be the last, but
it won't be the last. But that next game, the North Texas Mean Green. We don't want to talk too much about it, but just
it's gonna be a tough
how impactful will a win today be for FIU's hopes going up against not just a group of 5 school, a former Conference USA opponent and a team that humbled FIU last season.
You need a win. You need to win this one tonight. At least get that win on the board, because if you lose tonight and you go next week into you host UNT, you may start 0-3.
You may start 0-3. Yeah, I mean, again, North Texas. That's another game that can go either way, kind of like Louisiana Tech, in my opinion. But we'll save that for the preview.
Nice week.
Yeah, I mean, so final thoughts before we start to get in our cars, maybe grab an umbrella and make our way to the FIU football stadium, gentlemen.
I'm excited. Home opener, my first one ever.
Hey.
Not only as a student, so I'm excited for that.
You never forget your first home opener.
You will never forget the first home opener. Hopefully it's a win. Obviously, you could read Jake's recap and preview and any of our articles at the Paws Up page.
Not to mention, shout out Kevin's article for SI. That was really cool.
Sports Illustrated. We're going big time.
Man. That was super sick. We got some recaps if you want to do a bit of reading. And, of course, we just can't thank you all enough for the support. And
Jake is going to be on the halftime show. And
I'll do the halftime show, and then we'll all group up for the preview. Hopefully it's going to be a happy one after we talk to Coach Mike and the players. So,
yes,
Johnny, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just excited to get rolling. I just want to see us back up, and I want to have some fun today. Obviously it was fun watching us on national TV last week, but it's better when you're seeing it in person and just in a cool atmosphere like it is at the Cage.
Yeah, a stadium that's had renovations done, brand new club suites, brand new upper section, and of course, brand new concessions, including Chick-fil-A. And good news, today's a Saturday, so you can grab yourself some chicken sandwiches at the game and wear gold. All right, wear gold. I love these themes that FIU is doing with what fans should wear. All right, everybody. We'll see you at the game. See us. Be sure to say hey. And yeah, man. Paws up.